Okay, thanks very much. Can I just thank you as well for the opportunity to come today. We did ask if we could come. We understood that you wanted to have a meeting, there were things you needed to discuss and to understand amongst yourselves. But we were very keen to have this opportunity just to explain some of the challenges we've been facing as a police service, your police service, but also the challenges that we face as a community now in the next few days as we try to get to a much better place for Birmingham and for the communities that we all live in. So I was on duty all day yesterday and I found myself in Birmingham city centre. I've just gone to run a couple of messages as the issues were starting to swell up in the city centre. So I'm going to give you my recollections, which were based on what I saw in the city centre, and then later in the evening I went to our control centre and I monitored all of the events all across the city until things eventually quietened down at around 2:30 this morning. So yesterday evening, I noticed a few disparate groups, a few different elements gathering in the city centre. The first ones I noticed were a group of guys, they were white guys, between about 25 and 40. I sort of recognised them as the sort of activist people who are anti-capitalists or environmentalists, and quite often they would get involved in disputes of this nature. They were near to New Street Station, and they were sort of goading some of the British Transport Police officers who were down at the station at that time. And I was walking back up to the White House, and as I came up to St Philip's in the cathedral area, I could see a lot of our officers standing, around some of the shops. So at that point, I noticed that some of the premium shops there, the Louis Vuitton, etc., that had been attacked, and there was clothing over the road, and I knew that things had started to take shape. As I got closer to our police headquarters on Colmore roadside, there was a very large group of youths there. This was a considerably younger group of youths, aged between, I would say, 14 and 25. They were a mix of sexes. They were mostly young men, and I would have to say not exclusively, but the majority were from African-Caribbean communities. That dynamic will change later in the evening, but that's what I saw at that stage. That was quite an intimidating group, but what I recognised and saw in it was that it wasn't the usual criminal characters that we would deal with as a police service. We're very well used to dealing with some of the worst elements of our society. The guys who are out there involved in organised crime or gang activity. We know those faces well. They're altogether more mature in the way they operate. These were our kids. These were our young people who were on the streets of Birmingham last night. That I hadn't seen before in Birmingham, and that worried me. And as I headed back into headquarters to start picking up my duties for the evening, I started to hear windows smashing in the background, and I think it was the newsagents that was done first on Colmore Road. I made my way down to our control centre. We have a control centre where we can monitor all of these activities. We communicate with the officers, we can communicate with the helicopter, and we can guide people into the incidents that are taking place. And it helps us cover a large area like the city centre. That crowd broke up and developed. Its numbers grew very, very quickly last night, and they started to attack a lot of the premium premises in the city centre. So the Adidas store was attacked, the Apple store, the Sony centre. It was just one big brand name targeted after another. And we were getting swamped. We had mobilised all of the police resources we could yesterday afternoon, and we had brought them into Birmingham city centre because we were fearful, because of the text messaging and the social media activity, that there was going to be some copycat activity from what we'd seen in London. But it was very difficult. We made a lot of arrests quite early on. We were able to pick up the people who were burgling those premises. They were running out with big arms of clothing. We've got pictures of people coming down the street with big flat screen televisions and the like, and you'll be seeing a lot of those images in the newspaper and on the internet over the next few days, and we'll be looking to catch up with those people in due course and to hold them accountable for what they were doing. But as we were arresting those people and taking them back to the station, more and more people were coming into the city centre and they were joining in. The dynamics of the group were changing. They were older in age. There was white and Asian people part of the groups. People were taking advantage of the situation in Birmingham city centre. We had to, for periods while we were in the control centre, we were watching looting going on, and we were struggling to find the resources to intervene and to stop it. That was a very uncomfortable situation to be in. Not a situation we want to be in again, and it's one that I think we have to avoid for the credibility of the service we provide to you, and for the sake of our, the safety of our people, and for the business interests, in our communities, and particularly in our city centre. As the evening went on, the crowd did start to dissipate slowly. A lot of people left because they had goods that they wanted to take home and things that they wanted to secrete. Of course, our officers started to come back from the custody blocks back onto the streets, and we secured the city centre. One or two groups carried on as they left the city centre, and one particular quite hardcore group, who were probably, if you could define a group of ringleaders amongst all of that chaos last night, they continued committing offences up Constitution Hill into Soho Road, carried on into Grove Lane and Nineveh Road, Nineveh Avenue as well, those areas. We saw more premises attacked. There was a jeweller's, a petrol station, makeshift barricades were put across the road, and some of those makeshift barricades were set alight. And a couple of cars were set alight as well. And we were working with the fire service and the ambulance service in our control centre, and they were having great difficulty getting in to deal with those issues. Of course, if you can't get to a fire quickly and if you can't put it out, it poses a very real risk to all the businesses and all the residents. And of course, by this stage, the issues had moved out of the city centre and they were firmly in residential areas. So again, we were facing issues and threats that we don't want to see in our communities, and hence why this issue is such a priority for us. The dangers and the risks and the stakes are very, very high in these scenarios. I'm glad to say that I don't think we have faced anything like the challenges that they've been facing in London. For the vast majority of last night, this was about petty criminality. It was about taking advantage of a situation. It was about trying to grab what you could and run out of the city centre with it. When the crowd did turn and confront the police, it was towards the end of the evening. And there was a bit of finger pointing, and the police were able to take control of roads, and we were able to push people off roads to take control. I think the sector base boss over at Holyhead Road, that was subject of a petrol bomb attack. Yeah, we did put that out, but we should be able to get the sector base back up and running so that facility won't be lost in the short term. But it was an afterthought, the confrontation with the police. We don't have any officers injured. We don't appear to have any serious injuries in the community either. This was about the criminality of stealing from the shops more than anything. And there were people participating from all parts of the city and from all communities. And therefore I feel today there is a responsibility all across the community about what we can do to take control, about advising young people that I suspect wouldn't normally be involved in this type of activity. I actually think from what I saw last night, there's a very particular vulnerability for young people at the moment. These weren't our usual criminals. There are people amongst this group who are going to find themselves going to prison for quite a considerable period of time, and they may not have been involved in any criminality before. And hence why last night, when we got to the control centre and we understood what was happening, the message that we put on to every community that we could was, do you know where your young people are tonight? Because we are very worried about what's happening in the city centre. And we think you should be as well. If you don't know where they are, please phone them. Please work out where they are, make sure they're safe, and make sure you get them home. And if they are at home, keep them at home, please, because we're uncomfortable with what's happening. That's a message I think is equally relevant tonight. We're not quite sure what we're going to face tonight in Birmingham. What I can say is that the policing response is considerably stronger this evening. We've had another 24 hours opportunity to plan, to mobilise the resources that we need from people who should have been on holiday or should have been taking rest days. They are back on duty. They're all working a minimum of 12-hour shifts, and they'll have to stay on and keep resourcing until we're absolutely sure that our communities are safe. So I was with Chris this afternoon in the community meeting. I see this opportunity as an extension of the process that began there. This is not the only community meeting, of course, that's taking place in Birmingham today. There are many, many community meetings to take place across Birmingham until we're absolutely confident that we understand why we've got into this situation and we're confident that we've got control of the situation. My final appeal to you before we start talking about issues and questions is that, protect the young people. They are vulnerable at the moment. Let us not be in a situation where some good young people got involved in a bit of misadventure that went far, far too far, and we end up having things to regret for many years to come on a very personal or family level. Okay. Thanks for listening. I look forward to it.